Is he ready? Ready? Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan meeting. If you're interested in having a copy of the agenda or the staff reports, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. As president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and that all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside of chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to the staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. Responses to public comments will be given once the hearing is closed. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Paul Gutenberger.
Here.
Catherine Ransford.
Here.
Ed Rosenbaum.
Here.
Harold Heiser.
Here.
James Petrudis.
Here.
Dave Kaufman. Here. Mason Pike. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from November 22nd, 2021? If so, are there any, I'm sorry, okay. It's not on my agenda, so I was following my agenda, but that's okay. I'm used to being interrupted. Go ahead.
Officers isn't on your. Okay. Oh, that's a December meeting.
Well, that's why.
Ian doesn't. Okay.
So at this point, we need the election of officers. And the officers we have are, Mr. Taylor?
President, Vice President, Secretary, and your secretary is usually appointed to sign those documents. So those three officers.
Okay, so start with, do we have nominations for the position of president?
Nominate you to treat as president.
I respectfully decline, as I will not be able to be in attendance at the proper number of meetings. So thank you. Other nominations? You can only take one step back, so someone's got to jump up.
Oh.
Okay. We have a nomination. We need a second. We don't need a
I'll
second.
nominate Catherine.
I'm sorry.
I feel like the two older, older's not right. I feel the two more experienced board members probably should take the position.
Thank you for editing that.
I thank you. So I don't care which one of the two, but I think they would.
So are you making a nomination?
Do you want to do it? Catherine? I'll nominate Catherine Ransberg.
Okay. Catherine Ransberg has been nominated.
And I thank you for the nomination, but I haven't been here.
Declining to accept? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm declining to accept my nomination.
For the record?
For the record.
Okay. Any other nominations?
I do have a question. When would this take effect?
Yesterday?
Yeah, immediately.
Yep.
At the next meeting, correct?
Usually.
Mr. Taylor, or is that tonight?
Oh, right here.
It'll be tonight, right? Okay.
Okay.
I move we close nominations.
Is there a second on that? All right, all those in favor of Catherine Ransberg being president of the Planning Commission signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? My condolences. Vice president, or do I move now, Dan?
You move now, but before you move, could I ask for a 2-minute recess so I can swear in Mr. Pike? And I promise.
No, you can't.
My apologies for being late. Sorry about that.
You'll just give us 2 minutes.
We almost made you president by being late. You're lucky.
Takes over at this point, correct?
Okay,
Okay,
so,
I can leave.
thank you. I guess, so now we move on to the election of vice president. Am I allowed to make nominations as president? I would like to nominate Paul Guckenberg. I would also move that nominations be closed. Oh, thank you. All in favor of Paul Guckenberg as vice president of the Avon Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, Paul, you're in this with me. So, and then finally, I would like to nominate that Bill Peoples continue as our secretary treasurer, as he's done a very fine job, at least in the time that I've been here. I can't speak to prior to that, but I would nominate Bill Peoples to be combination secretary treasurer. We have a second from Paul, and we'll give it to Jim since this is the
I don't
last meeting.
I move nominations to be closed.
All in favor of Bill Peoples being the commission's secretary treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we have a new slate of officers. So do the officers need to be sworn in, Mr. Taylor? Okay, so we can move on. Okay, has everyone had an opportunity to read the meeting minutes from December 20th of 2021? And are there any proposed changes or edits that anyone would like to make?
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from December 20th, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And the meeting minutes are accepted, are approved. Committee reports. BZA,
Board of Zoning Appeals heard 3 special exceptions. What was it, religious use? One was a religious use, one was for a drive-through, and one was for a car wash on along 36. The drive-through and the car wash were along 36, and then the religious use was, that was along 36 too, just a little bit further south, in an industrially zoned area. All 3 of those were approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
what's the next one? Committees.
RDC, BZA,
The BZA.
Town Council.
Town Council. Do we have anybody from the Town Council? And then we need the Redevelopment Commission. Anybody from the Redevelopment Commission have a report? Okay, so that wraps up our committee reports. Mr. Peoples, are there any requests for continuances or agenda modifications for this evening?
No requests for those.
And we now move to the public comments. Thank you. To the public comments portion of the evening. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on any items that are not on the agenda. Items that are on the agenda need to be, I believe we have a sign-up sheet over there, and we also are monitoring the Facebook page, correct? And,
No comments are taken from social media.
okay, thank you. Any comments for, any public comments relating to items not on the agenda? Open to the floor at 6:44. No comments? Then we are closing the public comment section at 6:44. Don't believe we have any introductions. And now we move on to old business. The first item of old business is ZA 2107 Unified Development Ordinance, which is request for favorable recommendation to the Avon Town Council for the repeal of the current zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance and the replacement with the Unified Development Ordinance. And the petitioner is William Peoples, who's the planning director for the town of Avon.
Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. At long last, we're getting before you here to do the public hearing on the Unified Development Ordinance. This is a replacement of our current zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance. So what you're doing tonight is forwarding a recommendation, let's see, to the town council on the UDO that was forwarded to you. We do request that you provide a favorable recommendation to the town council for the repeal of the current zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance and the replacement of that ordinance with the Unified Development Ordinance. The zoning ordinance and the current zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance were adopted around 2002 with complete revisions, and but that itself was a replacement of an ordinance that was done in 1996 when the town was incorporated. There have been several ordinance amendments almost every year. We will have one or two petitions come before you for a recommendation for amendments to the ordinance, either the subdivision control ordinance or the zoning ordinance. And so there have been a number of ordinance amendments. What you have before you is really a lot of the ordinance is very similar to what the ordinance that we have right now. It's very rare for an ordinance to be a wholesale change, just a total rejection of the current ordinance and then adopting a brand new ordinance. Now, we do have a new format, but if you go through the text of that particular ordinance, you'll find that a lot of the text in the current ordinance is similar to or identical to the text of the UD of the current zoning ordinance. We did do a number of public outreach events. We have placed the UDO and the First Amendment of the UDO on the website for public comment. We did distribute it and seek public comment from some of the neighborhood associations, from the Builders Association of Greater Indiana, or the Baggy, and some of the individuals who were on the steering committee when we originally kicked this process off. We did, and many of the Plan Commission members that are here tonight did sit in on the joint meeting of the Plan Commission and the Town Council on November 4th of last year, where we did do a fairly detailed presentation on the ordinance, and we were given information about the portions of the document that are similar to the current standards and which portions are significantly altered. The drafts of the document have been distributed to both the Plan Commission and the Town Council on 3 separate occasions: September 13th, 2021, December 2nd, 2021, and of course last week when we finally finalized the most recent additions to the UDO. The latest draft that was distributed to you last week, version 2.7, which is dated January 7th, 2022, incorporate some new provisions into it for combined feeding operations, since we do maintain an agricultural primary use district and also an agricultural overlay district. It seemed prudent to put some standards in our ordinance for combined feeding operations. Also for solar land uses, both as accessory uses and as primary uses of land, and small cell facilities. We do propose some elimination of some districts in the ordinance. R1A shopping center, which is the SC zoning classification, the C4 zoning district, and the I4 zoning classification. So we compressed the number of zoning classifications, and I want to say we've gone to 5 residential zoning classifications, 3 commercial zoning classifications, and 3 industrial zoning classifications. On the zoning map, the changes that will be reflected on the zoning map, the R1A district, when it disappears, will be molded into the R2 zoning district. Shopping center would become the C2 zoning classification, and the C4 zoning classification would be amended into the C3 zoning classification. And finally, the R4 zoning classification would be amended into the RI3 zoning classification on the official zoning map when that's forwarded to the council and adopted, should it be adopted. The main changes to this ordinance are the incorporation of density caps in the various residential zoning classifications. The current zoning ordinance doesn't. These are the changes that are the most interested, or that have been seen to be the most interested parties, was the density caps in the ordinance. The current ordinance does not specifically address density. It addresses density sort of off to the side, the use of open space requirements and minimum lot sizes and those sorts of things. Now the ordinance itself does specify different density caps for the various residential zoning classifications. It does it in 2 ways. One, a straight up zoning density cap, which basically specifies the development standards if you just want to do the baseline architectural standards. But then it also provides some density bonuses if the intent is to do enhanced architectural features for the structures that are constructed in the residential zoning district. It does incorporate a number of checklists into the ordinance to determine how many elements, architectural elements, have to be incorporated in the different facades to meet the enhanced architectural features, and then be allowed to use the density bonuses. Have I covered everything you want to? The consultants are here if you have any further questions. I've read it several times. And so I can also, and of course, the thing about a zoning ordinance is we do the best we can up front, but when we start administering the ordinance, we'll find weaknesses. So I would anticipate that, just like any ordinance, even our current ordinance, that as we start administering it, we'll find, that isn't working right. We'd come to you all with amendments to change things. But the ordinance that we are proposing to you, that we forwarded to you last week, we think is a real good ordinance. It has been reviewed extensively by members of the community, and we do recommend, or we do request, that the Plan Commission forward a favorable recommendation of the proposed UDO to the Town Council. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Catherine? I would like to say that in looking and reviewing this ordinance, the draft was originally sent to us September 13th of 2021. This is now January, so we've had 5 months to review the UDO. I think the town coming in, the staff came in fairly new and did a great job of assembling everything, working with consultants. So I appreciate the work they've done on that. We then talked about this in September. It was then, again, we've had this for several months, so I appreciate the work they've done. and I think it's pretty comprehensive and with the minor changes that have been made. I appreciate the fact that we've had plenty of time to digest this, and it's been a very lengthy process, and we've certainly been very forthcoming to the public about what we're doing. So I appreciate all those different items, and whenever we're ready, I'm ready to recommend recommendation.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So Bill, I found the things, the addendums very interesting. Small cells or cell phone towers, what I call cell phone towers, is that correct?
Yeah, well, no,
I got two questions. That, and I probably should know this, what does ROW stand for?
right of way.
Right of way.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
right of way.
Thank you.
So small cells, so with the advent of the 5G network, what we typically have now is not the big 150-foot, 180-foot monopole and lattice tower communication towers. What happens now with 5G is they're typically co-located on a 30 to 50-foot tower. And you've probably seen them in neighborhoods and didn't even realize. It looks like a trash can essentially at the top, on the top of a pole. And they're generally located within the right of way. And so that our ordinance isn't typically set up to handle something as unobtrusive as the small cell facilities. It treats almost everything as a 150-foot monopole antenna. And so and plus the FCC has really sort of cut back on the ability of a local government to regulate these things, and the General Assembly for that matter. So we felt it prudent to put in those small cell requirements. So we have some standards. The standards we're allowed to put in an ordinance according to the FCC. And
So if someone wants to install a cell phone tower, do they have to come before the commission, or if they meet all the requirements here, are they good to go, or is there any review of that?
If it is a small cell facility that they're just going to put on an existing pole in the right of way, they would do that through the Public Works Department. Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about a new cell tower, they would probably have to do a development plan review petition if it's in one of the permitted use districts, they would do a DPR. If not, they would either rezone or do a use variance for the large ones. Now, honestly, we haven't. There was obviously a big run on those things in the early mid 90s. And what I'm seeing right now is more of co-locating on on the existing large antennas rather than constructing new large antennas. So in most cases, I think the cellular companies are opting to co-locate, and that we usually do that just through a permitting process. We don't even bother with the Public Works or anything on that. We just do an electrical permit and let them install the control structure at the base of the existing tower.
Next question on the continuing confined feeding operation. My jaw dropped, my eyes almost popped out when I read that. Is there actually space in the town for a confined feeding operation to take? Have you looked at our layout of our town, seen if there was enough acreage and enough places where they actually could put one of those things in?
Theoretically speaking, probably the southwest part of the town, northwest part of the town. It's going to be at the fringes of the town if it's permitted. The southwest area itself has a large amount of property that's zoned ag. Northwest, there's a few areas probably that would meet the thresholds on that. So no, we don't think that this is something we're not regulating this because there's an imminent threat or anything like that. We're regulating this because we felt it was prudent to do it, just in case.
But that would, even if it's zoned agriculture, would they still have to come before us to put a continuous feed operation in place, or they pretty much have, if it's zone agriculture, they can do it?
I'd have to, honestly with you, I'd have to read the ordinance.
I can look at it. I can address that.
Yeah.
They have a right to do it if it's agricultural. There's a state law that says that and this is why we drafted this, is that local governments cannot make that anything other than a permitted use in an agricultural area because of the Right to Farm Act, and that all local zoning authorities can do is control siting of the confined feeding operation on the land itself. So we have the right to say how far it has to be from a property line. And so what we've tried to do here is do what we can. And so this is one of those areas, much like small cell facilities, where the state of Indiana has taken power away from the local governments and said, you can't regulate this use. All you can do is these 2 or 3 things. So in these additions, what we've tried to do is do what we can do. Rather than say nothing, we've tried to do what we can do. So in the area of confined feeding operations, what we've said is we're going to try to have some requirements that keep you away from your neighbors and do other things. Those operations are heavily regulated by IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. They have to get a permit. There are all sorts of rules they have to follow for them. But the only thing we can do is say, well, if you're going to have one in our town, and it would be probably in the southwest part that is not quite fully developed on an existing farm, we can't prevent it, but we can at least control and protect neighbors. And that's what we've set out to do in that, in this addition. And that's why we thought, rather than say nothing, that someone might ask, why didn't you do something more?
Yeah, thank you.
So that's why it came in late. But we believe that we've addressed that issue to the full extent we can under the law. Same with small cell, the Indian legislature, there's preemption by the FCC, but even as to citing, the state legislature eliminated almost everything we can do. We cannot require them to be underground. We are required to allow them to locate on existing utility poles or to build a new pole in our right of way. They are becoming smaller and smaller units. And to me, they look like the old stereo speakers we used to have when we were younger. The kids don't understand that, but you know what I mean. Up on a pole, and sometimes on a light pole, even a city light pole. So in both of these, we're just trying to fill the void with what we can do.
Thank you. Last question, and then I'm done. The solar panels, I really don't have a problem with the houses and the business doing that, but like solar fields, like what's out by the airport, is that, what kind of controls, or if somebody wants to put do 5 acres of solar panels, do we have any control? Does that addressed here?
That is, yeah.
Can you just touch on that briefly for me, and I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to, let me get my. A lot of these standards, I found some model zoning ordinances online. And the only thing I'm really questioning on this is whether I made it a use permitted by special exception or a permitted use in some of the districts. So that's what I'm checking right now. I just don't know that for certain off the top of my head.
Well, I know it starts off, solar energy systems are permitted accessory used in all zoning areas where structures are allowed. To me, that seems pretty broad. I didn't, but.
Yeah, well, and then it would have to meet the standards for accessory uses. So the difference between a primary use and accessory use, obviously, is that there's a permitted use where I've seen this most often are basically a small freestanding solar structure or two associated with a large lot, single family residence or an agricultural land use. So my experience on these has been on that one. And so we've treated anybody that wants to put a solar energy system up as an accessory use to a permitted primary use, they would just have to meet the accessory use standards of the district in addition to these. So setback and those sorts of things.
But that really doesn't apply to a solar field.
No, it doesn't. That would be a permitted primary use of the zoning ordinance, and then it would be, and that's what I'm trying to find out. I just don't remember whether I made them or whether I proposed a permitted use in a zoning district. I can't recall.
Okay.
But what's sticking in my head is that I made it a permitted primary use by special exception in the industrial and agricultural zoning districts.
Okay.
That's what I think I've done, but my notes don't have that in there. I actually, not I made it, but I proposed that it be a special exception in the industrial and agricultural zoning districts.
And what community, and what Bill said is important, what communities across the state are doing, because the requirement of diversification of energy sources is going to lead to solar development, more solar development in the state of Indiana. And so communities have approached it one of two ways. Some have said it's permitted by right. Some have said you have to come through, if you're agriculture industrial, you have to come through and have a special exception so that we can take a good look, maybe a better look at that. And so communities across the state are doing that. And the initial, you may have heard,
Okay, thank
but initially the kind of band of high profile cases were in Boone, Hamilton, and Madison counties, where those all required the use to be approved as a special exception, because those in the agricultural areas particularly, they are really large. The industrials, Amazon started this. Amazon started building a large solar arrays right next to their facilities for their own use, but as just part of that. And so those tended to be pretty large. So the way that the ordinance addresses that, that's why it treats those differently than if you want to put solar panels on your own roof, which is really pretty easy in our process. But the special exception, as you know, allows your Board of Zoning Appeals to take a good hard look and get down to some of the specific facts about how it's going to be done. And then the other important thing is the setbacks on any of the large solar arrays or farms, how far that's back off the property is. So I expressed a concern. I wanted to have something in there so that we had some setback instead of no setback. And so the inclusion of solar, something about solar was one of the suggestions I made to Bill.
And we just checked it. It's a use permitted by special exception in the I-1 district. It's a use permitted by right in the I-2, I-3, and AG. And then by special exception in AG, and then permitted by right in the institutional zoning classification. But the institutional zoning classification typically will have a master. So someone would have to come and request a rezoning to that classification with a master plan. And so you'd see it. Currently, I think we only have two pieces of property zoned institutional, a fire station and a public park.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your hard work too on this.
Oh, thank you.
A follow-up on this, just to make sure I'm clear. So the case that we saw in the news in Carmel where someone developed or installed solar panels in a lot adjacent to a lot that had the house on it, and neighbors complained. Does our ordinance look at R1, R2, any solar in residential? Or is it not a permitted use?
No,
on the road?
yeah, the way the ordinance would be written, if someone wants to do a freestanding solar panel on their property, as long as they meet the setbacks, just like they would a shed or any of these other things, they could do it.
So no side yard, solar res, not.
No, it would meet it would meet the side and it'd have to meet the side and rear yard setback for an accessory structure in our zoning ordinance in order for them to construct it. So no, they couldn't just stick it right on the property line or locate it in one of the easements or the other things. They'd have to meet all the same setbacks as you would if you were to place a shed on the property.
But it would have to be accessory,
Right.
which means that it would have to be there to serve that residence. It couldn't be used to generate power for others. See that when he's using a term of art here, accessory use. So there actually is a case on this that arose earlier in Indiana in which the generating power of the field was much more than the home would ever need. And it was the intention of the owner to provide that power offsite to everyone to buy it. And that was not allowed because it wasn't accessory. It wasn't really a zoning issue. It wasn't a use issue. It wasn't accessory. And so when Bill says it would have to be accessory to a residential use, that means that is accessory, like a garage is accessory, a standalone garage would be, or a pole building would be. It has to be for the benefit of the residents and the use of a residence. And so there's one case in Indiana where someone built something that the underlying planner said that's not accessory and the courts agreed, that's not accessory. That is not what we mean when we say accessory. And that term is defined in your ordinance, but that would be the difference there. That'd be a very important distinction to understand is what is accessory, what is not.
Mr. Peoples, is there anything that would prevent, I've been doing a lot of reading about, there are solar farms that are incorporating agriculture. They're figuring out that the solar panels actually provide shade for cooler crops, then it can be agricultural and solar. But also there are residential developments that are incorporating solar fields as part, in order to provide energy to that neighborhood or to that development. Is there anything in the current UDO that's been proposed that anticipates those uses?
Well, and I mean, it's a permitted use in the ag district. So if an agricultural land use wanted to do that, they could. Now, the residential zoning, so I think the way that it was conceptualized in the ordinance was that it would be an accessory use to a permitted primary use. So I don't know in a residential zoning district if someone wanted to, for instance, if a neighborhood association wanted to take their common area and create a solar farm in that common area. I think that they would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a use variance to do that land use in their common area.
What about the use of, and I don't even know if I have the right language for this, but where the homes themselves have solar panels, but they all feed into a common distribution cell. I'm trying to find the right words that would then provide is that, I've seen those kinds of neighborhoods
Yeah.
where they all contribute to the common electrical source.
I don't know. I guess it would just be I think that that's a case by case thing that we would have to look at and see I think that it all gets back down to the fact that it is an accessory to if it's on an individual lot, is it accessory to the primary use of the property? And that in most cases, that's going to be a single family or multifamily residential use in the R zoning districts. But I don't know if I could tell you that the proposal addresses that specific instance. I think it would be an interpretation issue.
I would think that'd be more probably new development than an established neighborhood deciding to do that, but
Yeah, I mean,
you
of
never
course
know.
we do. If it comes to something, we say that it's not something we can fit in one of the normal R districts. There's always the plan unit development district that someone could request to do something like that if they wanted to. But I don't, based on what I remember writing, I just don't think that specific instance really fits neatly in anything in that ordinance. It would just be either an interpretation issue or a trip to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a use variance.
Are there any further questions for staff, for the petitioner? Okay, we now go to the public comments relating to the UDO. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak to the proposal?
I have a Bob Kohler signed up.
Okay. Could you please state your name and address?
Bob Culler, 1483 Laurel Oak Avenue, or Drive in Avon, Indiana. I was a member of the steering committee for the UDO, one of the citizens on that, and I just wanted to just provide a couple more comments on that. Well, first, I want to say thank you for all your comments regarding all those, the new additions in there. I think this points back to where what Bill had mentioned is that it's not going to be perfect. We're going to see things, and what you brought up tonight is some of those things that we're going to see as the town continues to work with the new UDO. The UDO, the background was that the intent was working with the public, and with the public comment period we had, the public comments, the survey that we had out there, along with developers, and we came up with what we felt was the best fit. It doesn't meet everybody's opinion of being good. And that makes a good law, by the way. When there's something that either side doesn't like, then it's a good law in between there. There's still questions that the public, the citizens probably have, and one in particular, those of you who were at the joint session know, was the discussion on vinyl siding and whether or not we should allow vinyl siding in there. A lot of our developers on our new developments have gone away from vinyl siding. They've gone to the hardy plank. So again, that's something that you all, as well as the town council, need to decide if which way we want to go on that. The PUDs, plan unit developments. The intent of this is to reduce the need for plan unit developments, except for special examples. And the example that you're going to be seeing, you're going to hear later on tonight, is the Easton Gray. And that's a perfect example of a PUD and what it should look like. Not some of these ones that we've seen before in the past. And that's what the intent of the UDO is, to reduce those ones that we didn't consider true PUDs. It's been a long process. The committee first started in April of 2019, by the way, working on it. And the intent was for it to be in place in 2020. Well, we had some delays in that respect with the staff member changes for the town. And so rightfully so, we delayed it until this particular point in time. Once we get it approved, and I encourage everyone to approve it and pass it forward with a favorable recommendation to town council, we'll need to be looking at not only the zoning map as Bill described, but also our comprehensive plan. We need to make sure that our zoning ordinances now match with a comprehensive plan. And we need to probably revise the comprehensive plan in that respect. So the work is not all done yet, but again, in my opinion, it's in the right direction. And I again ask for a favorable recommendation with your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else signed up to speak on the issue of the Unified Development Ordinance?
No one else signed up.
And with that, I will close public comments. Correct?
You can give them an opportunity, whether, if they didn't sign up.
Oh, okay. Does anybody wish to speak with regards to the proposed Unified Development Ordinance? Okay, so now I will close public comments for this particular issue. Moving on to next item on the agenda for old business.
Now
No?
make a motion.
Recommendation.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Madam President,
I'm
I'll
new
make-
to this.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we forward a favorable recommendation to the Avon Town Council for ZA 21-07 Unified Development Ordinance, a request for approval to repeal the current zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance and replace it with Unified Development Ordinance as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And this is a roll call vote, Mr. Taylor? Okay,
Paul Linkenberger. 4. Catherine Ransberg.
4.
Ed Rosenbaum.
4.
Harold Heiser.
4.
James Pachulis.
4.
Dave Kaufman.
4.
Mason Pike.
4.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Peoples, for all of your work on doing this. We really know how much effort has been put into it, and we really appreciate that.
Thanks, Brian.
And Brian. Okay, now we move into the next item on the agenda, PUD 2103 Easton Gray PUD. This is a request for approval of a planned unit development to develop housing options and pedestrian mixed-use town center with interconnected commercial, residential, civic uses, and a network of both active and passive amenities. The 487-acre property is located north of US 36 and south of County Road 100 North and east of County Road 500 East. And the petitioner is Passar LLC, Care of Republic Development LLC.
Yes, as you've indicated, this is a request for initial master plan approval. It really is, for all intents and purposes, a rezoning request to the Plan Unit Development District. This petition is located obviously in the central western part of the town, out there and where 36 starts to curve south. This is the development plan that was so far has had 2 public hearings with the Plan Commission. Easton Gray, as I said, has had received 2 public hearings of the Plan Commission, November 22nd, December 20th. After the December public hearing, the case was continued to this meeting, but that was a result of an indecisive vote at the Plan Commission. Plan Commission had some concerns about the capital improvements plan or lack thereof for transportation improvements that would have been able to handle the traffic of this particular development. The staff had, of course, identified intersections as part of the traffic impact study that the petitioner had submitted as part of the petition. And that did identify 4 intersections that would result in certain times, peak AM and PM peak times, of reduced levels of service post-development. And then we also identified 2 streets that needed to be upgraded to handle the additional traffic, County Road 600 East and County Road 75 North. There have been, over the course of the last month, the petitioner has done another evaluation of the specific intersections with the intent of determining the improvements with the input of the town manager and the public works director. And up there on the board right there are the intersections and improvements that need to be made at least post-development, to maintain the level of service on these roads. County Road 600 East should be widened to 2 12-foot lanes with overlaid with a minimum of 3 inches of asphalt and road reinforcing fabric. A single lane roundabout needs to be constructed at 100 North and 600 East. A dual lane roundabout at 100 North and Avon Avenue. A southbound right turn lane be constructed at Main Street and County Road 500 East. And then a northbound right turn lane constructed at Main Street and County Road 525 East. This gives you, so this is one of the exhibits of the previous staff report, and we've amended this exhibit to show you, this is actually, I believe, PM peak. So the red arrows show you the areas that have reduced levels of service post-development, full build out. And then also shows the proposed improvements that we've studied and anticipate that would solve those issues, or at least maintain the level of service. Now, these are the 2 street systems here that needed to be upgraded, 75 and County Road 600 East. The solution to that one is a little bit different. So at least with 75 East. Now, 600 would be as the staff presentation there, widened to 2 12-foot lanes, and then a new asphalt 3-inch basically surface placed on that widening so that it can handle modern traffic. 75 is a wee bit different. 75 currently extends basically through here. What we would do is vacate 75 from 600 to I think that's 575 right there. Or I'm sorry, that's 75 does a right turn right here. 2 right turns. We'd vacate it here. We'd keep this here because that's the entrance to the school. But the developer would essentially build a new public street through the development that would take the place of 75. And then there are 2 property owners on 75 in this location, and they would gain access to the new street through the common area, and the developer would either dedicate that land to those property owners or dedicate an easement to those property owners so they would have access to that new public street. I believe that was the biggest concern of the Plan Commission at the previous meeting. We did recommend we did recommend that this commission forward a favorable recommendation to the town council, subject to one condition. We maintain that condition. We're just a lot closer We are still in discussions with the developer, the town manager, and the public works director. And obviously, there is some coordination that the town has to do because we have multiple jurisdictions in charge of the street system here, including Hendricks County and the Indiana Department of Transportation. So it's not a unilateral decision. So the town, the developer, the county, and Indiana INDOT needs to still coordinate. And so that's the one condition that we have forwarded to the town council for a favorable recommendation. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for staff?
Yes. Bill, could you go back a slide, please?
Yep. Might want to zip that up there.
So we're 75 turns north and then goes further east. They're going to wipe that part out.
Yeah, from here to here.
But then there's 75 goes in front of the landowners. Some of the 75 is obviously going to be retained because that's where the landowner driveway is at, correct?
Well, we'd vacate the current alignment through here.
So you're going to wipe out the whole thing, 75 going all the way over to 600 is going to be wiped out.
We wouldn't remove, well, obviously from about here to here, it would be removed, but it would become a private road back to them. Now, they don't have to necessarily utilize it. They can, the intent is both those landowners can utilize the new road for their access.
Well, they'll have to utilize it. If you wipe out 75, they have no choice but to utilize
Right.
that road, right?
Yeah.
But that road's not showing on that map. You had to create a whole new graded out and everything, and it's not shown on that map, correct?
The current alignment, it's shown, it's just difficult to see. It does something like this and then comes up here like
Where's the
this.
current house at? Is that around the blue marks where the current?
Right here.
Okay. Okay.
There's two. There's like one right here and one right here.
Okay.
Would the developer be assuming the cost of extending those driveways to the new?
That I believe, yeah, that they've been in discussions with those property owners to do that very thing. Yeah, it's not something that town would require the property owner to do.
Okay.
Do you know how much that extension is?
How much
To
the
the
extension,
drive, yeah.
the cost? I don't know. We haven't.
But the developer's willing to take that on, so
Yeah,
we'll make that homeowner happy.
Yeah, well, they've indicated that they
Well,
will
that's-
extend, yeah, they'll extend the driveways through their property. And the choice of incorporating that into the property or encumbering the property with an easement, I don't think that they've gotten that far as what the desire is.
So the homeowner, the town's going to take care of all these roads, as we talked about last month. It's all the roads, the town for snow removal, maintenance and all that. That's going to be on the town inside the subdivision.
Right, all the public roads, right.
So, but the landowner may have a little bit of a longer driveway that he has to maintain and keep up and remove snow from.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Bill, a question on the commitments that were listed in your report here. There were 6, I only counted 5 bullets up on the slide they had here, but I guess the question I have is, do we need, assuming that the developer agrees with the commitments, do we build these into the motion?
I don't think so, no. Not these requirements. So the memorandum that I gave, so the 6-point memorandum was a memorandum from Steve Moore to me concerning some improvements. The one that I did not include on my bullet points up there was the one, number 2, that dealt with the developer completing improvements to the site entrance off US 36 and County Road 571, because that was going to happen regardless.
So, but why wouldn't we
Right.
put these commitments within our motion?
Because these requirements have certain costs, and those costs are not finalized enough yet. There's some discussion still going back between the developer and the town on the costs. And so I think the preference would be that these not be commitments on the rezoning, so that the town can continue to make that, well, the town obviously can, because it'd be the common council that makes or the town council makes the final decision.
But isn't this the point where we would put commitments in if we make a motion?
Yeah,
We don't have another time to get commitments.
that's true. We don't on this, but I think that we have a broad consensus between the parties here, but we don't have absolute agreement. So I don't think that the town really wants these bullet points here as commitments to the rezoning, at least not at this level. If the town council wants to make those commitments to the rezoning, they have the authority to do that. But I don't think we'd want the plan commission to get involved in fiscal issues.
Well, could we leave the dollar amounts out? I mean, I think that's the whole reason we came back this month, was because the commission wanted something in there that said, this is the guidelines, this is what we want you guys to do. And if the town doesn't like it, then they certainly can strike it. My preference would be to put it in there. And if the town council decides, hey, because of this reason, and we've got some experts on the town council that knows more than I do about traffic studies, but I'd rather put it in there from the commission, from us, put it in there. And if the town doesn't like it, they can take it out. That'd be my thought.
We probably should hear from the petitioner first before we have that conversation, I would think.
One more question. I know Mr. Taylor was maybe going to be prepared to make a comment.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just, this is one of those, this is a little tricky because there's no final agreement yet on these commitment terms. And so the procedure is that the town council can make a condition of its approval or a commitment more stringent than you do, but they can't make it less stringent. If they make a commitment less stringent, it has to come back here. And so what the town's recommendation is that ultimately the town council will decide what money it wants to contribute. But if you add these in here and then through further analysis, they decide that number 3 should be $445,000 instead of $448, guess what? It has to come back to you. And so this is one of those times where, because of this rule about what can be changed from a commitment as it goes from here to the legislative branch, this sort of approach that the bill is suggesting provides more flexibility for the town. And although the town could strike anything they don't like, if they make it less, if ultimately the terms are less money or fewer commitments, then it has to come back to you and take another step and then come back to them. And so that's what we're trying to avoid here, is we don't really want it to come back here for another round and delay the development unnecessarily. So the thought was that with advising you that, a lot more work has been done, more analysis has been provided, the staff would like you to send it on to the town council for that reason. It's a real tricky procedural issue.
Along with that vein, Mr. Taylor, it's my estimation, the summary of what you're saying is, or for playing chess 4 moves down the road, if we do not give some flexibility to the town staff, then we hamstring their ability, and we also focus on items that may impact future negotiations as well. So therefore, it would be best for us to let them take the ball.
Sure wish I had said it that way. Yes.
When you've seen these sort of commitments in the past, and they've been forwarded to the town council with those commitments, Brookstone is the most recent example, but there was agreement. There wasn't continued negotiations going on with Brookstone. When that came to you and you guys made those commitments, Brookstone agreed to those commitments before it came to you. We have agreement on the improvements that need to be made, and we have agreement on, the timing and those sorts of things, but we don't have agreement on costs and shares yet.
I
It's
think
not
it's
at that
important
point.
to remember, as Mr. Taylor pointed out, that the town council can always step in and do this. Right now, we need to leave flexibility for our town staff to work with the developers so that we can get to a final project. Micromanaging, particularly this early in the game, is just going to delay this and could have an impact that wasn't intended.
So, Mr. Taylor, how does this, and Bill, both of you, so how does this go forward to the town? Like, so Bill, will you present this to the town and you'll have these recommendations in front of the town council, even though we don't have them in the official mission, the motion that we make, and you'll still present these ideas?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
So when I forward when I certify the recommendation of the Plan Commission on a rezoning or a initial review of a PUD master plan, I forward them not only just the document itself, or not only the certification, but I also forward them, in this particular case, it'll be the ordinance and the staff report and all the addendums. And these memorandums here will be part of those addendums that the town council will see when they evaluate it.
So they will see this?
Yes, they'll see the memorandum, they'll see the
great.
memorandum
That's what I need to know.
from
Thank you.
Steve to me and from me to you.
Thank you.
Just follow up then, so, and I'm interested in what the developer will say to these here as we hear from them. But the question I have here, isn't it part of the Plan Commission's responsibilities to deal with things like this before it goes to the town? Because part of this, I look at this as safety, overall safety of the development long-term, which is the safety of our roads and development of the roads. And shouldn't we address that before, as part of our recommendation to the town council of doing our job and our due diligence before they get there? Because they're not always road experts on town council. Be nice if there were, but they do have those experts available to them. So I'm just looking for some guidance on that, because if I'm taking the wrong approach, I'd appreciate it.
I think this is an unusual case. The town council knows a lot about this project. This is not like this is going to come to them and they're not going to. They've had the introduction of the PUD, which is required now. They also had a presentation even prior to that, and their staff has been in negotiations now with the developer about these road contributions. They get reports about that. This is a little different than perhaps other cases we've had where they really don't know much about a case until they get it. This is really.
This project's so big, is that why that's coming down that way?
Yeah, well, that, and it's a very, very large development, which everyone knew there had to be a lot of sharing of information early on. And in this case, also our economic development director worked with the developer. Again, that doesn't always happen because of the commercial nature of part of the development and the size. And so the town council, they know about this case. Now, if this were a case they knew nothing about and they got a recommendation which was more bald than one which had some detail, they might think, yeah, what are those guys at the Plan Commission doing? Is this how they should? But in this particular case, what I think your staff's trying to tell you is the negotiations are ongoing. The town council's aware. Those negotiations will likely get finished before the town council is willing to make a decision, but hopefully they will be done. And the town council members will already know what those are because they will have been a part of that. So it's a really unusual case in terms of scope and also the town staff's participation, town council members' knowledge. And so, yeah, it's just a little different than any case we've seen, well, at least in 20 years. So,
Mr. Taylor, is there any possibility that of going forward with this and making this recommendation is setting some kind of setting some kind of a precedent that would impact the way that the Planning Commission functions in the future?
no, it's a really fair question, but as you know, the a PUD case is really a rezone case, which means it's discretionary. And so your job and the job of the town council is merely to look at it and apply the statutory criteria, which are the 5 statutory criteria for a rezone, and plus the factors for a PUD. And so because they're discretionary, There's no worry. I have no worry about precedents or anything of that nature, like I might if this were a true zoning decision, which by that I mean a plat or a DPR. So you always have discretion to look at each case on its merits and then exercise discretion. So as you recommended, I have no concerns about that.
Okay. Any further questions for staff?
Bill, I have one quick question for you. So the new 75 South, I think right now the hope is that most residents will go up 100 North. They're going to River Birch, go up to 525 and then come around. Are you comfortable with the proposed new 75 South accommodating any potential increase in traffic with folks going that way? And that might be a question for a later date, but
I think that the proposed compromise that we have in that memorandum would be a better solution than what we have right now. I mean, 75 right now is probably 17 feet wide if they're lucky, or 18 feet wide at that location. So, yeah, and I believe that the intent is to construct that street as a residential business collector. At least the construction of the street itself, so it would be able to handle an increased level of traffic.
Can I ask one more question, then I'll shut up, I promise. Has River Birch ever asked for access to 100 North? Particularly now, if we have all the subdivisions, it's going to be harder maybe for them to come from the east side. I'll just ask
Yeah,
that question.
not that I'm aware of, no.
I'm kind of surprised that they haven't, but if the school corporation's happy with the setup, I'm certainly not going to fuss with it. Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Okay, if the petitioner would like to come forward.
Hi, good evening. For the record, I'm Sean McInnes. I'm with Republic Development. At 13578 East 131st Street, Suite 200 in Fishers, Indiana. As Bill indicated, we left here last month with some homework to do, to work with the town staff and come up with solutions to the 5 or 6 issues. Well, there were maybe 3 or 4 pointed out at the meeting, but the additional issues that the traffic study indicated. Just to directly answer your question, I believe we are substantially in agreement with that memorandum from Steve Moore. We just need to work through some of the percentage allocation issues. We fully expect to have that done before we would get through the town council process. With that, we've given some pretty extensive presentations. We're here to answer any questions, and we hope for a favorable recommendation this evening.
Questions for the petitioner?
I'll just say thank you. I think the town and you worked well together. I mean, you addressed the issues that we brought up. Hopefully financially you can work it out. I think with the project this big, I mean, I see some of these numbers, they're pretty big numbers, but you have a huge project. And when I hear what we're charging per lots, I mean, you're going to have to recoup your money that way, and the people have to pay for the cost of the traffic that's being increased. So, but I thank you. I was very pleased when I saw this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner from the board, from the commission? Okay, then I will open it up to public comment. Anybody who has signed up to ask or to comment on PUD 2103 Easton Grapehud?
We have one signed up, that's Mike Rawlinson.
Okay. At 7:39, we're opening it up to public comment. You need to come to the podium, please, and state your name and address.
My name is Mike Ronaldson. I represent Avon Community School Corporation here in Avon. So going back to your concern about County Road 75, and by the way, we have not actual access to County Road 100. But going back to that comment, as we expect elementary school walkers from this subdivision, since it borders completely around River Birch Elementary. And I've spoken with the developers and they seem to be favorable, but we'd like to just say that as you work with this County Road 75 and vacating part of that, we would ask for sidewalks to be contiguous with the school corporation and with the development where we have access for these student walkers to get to school without crossing a county road. And we think probably the advantage of vacating County Road 75 will allow access to where maybe they can cross through that area without having to worry about traffic. So as bus drivers become more and more rare, we welcome every walker that we can get. So that's the school corporation's opinion of this. That's all I have
Have you had a good working relationship with the developer?
so far.
Corporation?
Yep.
You've worked
Yep.
well.
We
How many
have.
times have you met? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, with the
How many times have
developer?
you met with the developer?
Well, actually, we've met with Mr. Bannon, not 10 times.
You weren't involved at all.
Okay. He says 10.
So there's been a lot of
For me,
communication.
a couple,
A lot
yes.
of communication. Good. I'm
Yes.
glad to hear that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else signed up to speak? I'm sorry?
No one else has signed up.
Is there anybody who would like to come to the podium and speak about this particular item on the agenda? Do we have anybody against social media?
Don't take social media comments anymore.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I now close public comments at 7:41 for PUD, for item agenda number PUD 2103 Eastern Gray PUD. Any discussion on the matter?
Yes, with what we just heard, is the developer willing to commit to the contiguous sidewalks to the project? Can you say that on the record, please?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Could you kind of show me how the sidewalks are, Bill, could you bring up the map and just show me how the sidewalks might work? I'm a little, just to see it. Are they on one of the plans? Are sidewalks?
Well, all the public streets should have sidewalks on both sides of it. Could you pull
So
up my-
all those public streets will have sidewalks on both sides?
Right, yeah, all the public streets will have sidewalks on both sides. Now, the difference is that, there it was, right there. Wait a minute, there. Right there. So, and it's not shown on here, unfortunately. So in the green spaces, there's a fairly extensive network of multi-use trails. I think there's even golf cart paths proposed and a number of other things, and they're not shown in here, but I guess in some places you sort of see them in here. Is so all these public streets in here will have sidewalks on both sides. And then in the green spaces, you see that there's actually a network of trails as well.
So what the school's asking on that south east corner of River Birch, going up through those blue sections of D, they'll have a sidewalk there where the students can cross then over into the school grounds, no higher up. Yeah, right. Somewhere right in there, they'll have, without crossing the road, they'll be able to go over to River Birch without going through the road. It's a subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, they would, like, this subdivision here is fairly, or this portion of the development is fairly standalone, but they do have access to the trail system here, so they would be able to get to they would be able to get to the school probably through the common area to the trail, on a trail. Because there's really knowing kids, they probably just cut through this poor person's yard here, but,
Right, and I see that with some of those D folks right there close to the school ground. They may have some kids. I live in a neighborhood where kids cut across and it works. I mean, it's okay. We were okay with it, but I mean, that has to be taken into consideration.
yeah.
So just comment while it's looking at that, is that, I think one is, this is the type of development that is good to see in Avon. And I know there's been a lot of work on this, and I appreciate the comments on the roads, and to look and expect the continued discussions with the developer. I appreciate how much they've been working with the town on this. So, and I really appreciate they listened to us in the last meeting, came back and worked on putting something together. So I just want to make sure and voice the support for this development here in Avon.
Any further discussion on the matter?
Do you like to make a motion?
Would anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to move that we forward a favorable recommendation to the Avon Town Council for PUD 2103 Easton Gray PUD, a request for approval of a planned unit development subject to the following conditions. The developer shall continue to coordinate with the town, county, and Indiana Department of Transportation to formulate a mid to long-term capital improvements plan in order to mitigate insufficient roadways and degradations of service as a result of this development prior to secondary master plan approval of the planned unit development.
Do I hear a second?
Before we do that, can we amend that to include the commitment for contiguous sidewalks?
I don't want to add that amendment because I think that's an agreement between the school system and the developer. So I wouldn't support that amendment.
Mr. Taylor?
It's your own argument of planning commission putting their 2 cents in.
The development of sidewalks is part of the development of the, as we get into the development of the unit, the area here, the sidewalk plan will be developed there. And that, I see that as a developer working with the school system. And I don't see how we could plan that, isn't that getting into detail?
Any guidance, Mr. Taylor?
Well, I think if they agree, it's okay to include as a commitment so that nobody backs out of that. I think that's okay. That's what we heard today on the record is that they agree. So I think that'd be okay.
I'm in my motion to
That the commitment was made for contiguous sidewalks to the schools.
to add the commitment of the developer for contiguous sidewalks within the development.
So can we have a rereading of the motion in its entirety as amended,
Do we need that?
just for clarity's sake?
I think we're fine. I mean, I
think we're good.
I'll be able to come up forward a recommendation to the council in my certification memorandum with the information that I have so far.
As I heard your motion, Mr. Guggenberger, I believe it's that you made your motion that we send a favorable recommendation with the condition regarding the long-term road plan as recommended by the staff and the commitment made by the petitioner regarding sidewalks requested by the school. Would that be a fair clarification?
Okay.
I second.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Paul Gutenberg,
Or
Catherine Ransberg,
4,
Ed Rosenbaum,
4.
Ellen Eisner,
4.
James Matrius,
4.
Dave Kaufman,
4.
Mason Pike,
4.
motion carries.
motion carries. And now we move on to new business. Our next item on the agenda is PUDF 2104 Brookstone PUD. And we would like to have a staff presentation on that, please.
This is a request for secondary review or primary plat approval of the Brookstone Plan Unit Development. The petitioner has submitted a waiver of 1, the Appendix A, maximum curb corner radius to establish a 25-foot radius. 2, Appendix A, minimum tangent between curbs to allow a minimum tangent between curbs to be 0 feet. 3, Appendix A, minimum tangent in intersections to establish the minimum tangent at the intersections to be 0 feet. 4, maximum distance between intersections to establish the maximum distance between intersections of 1,900 feet. 5, Appendix A, maximum tangent between curves to establish a maximum tangent between curves of 500 feet. 6, Appendix A, maximum tangent and signature. Dang it. Let's see, at Signature Street access, intersection to establish a maximum tangent at the intersection of 500 feet. 7, a waiver of Signature Street's access management standards to allow full access less than a quarter mile from the nearest adjacent intersection. And 8, town construction details to allow a reduction of the acceleration lane taper lengths. All right, the Brookstone Plan Unit Development. Since this is a planned unit development, the zoning ordinance calls this secondary review of the planned unit development. What it is, in fact, is the primary plat of the Brookstone Plan Unit Development. So when I go through all of long discussion. When you're looking at this petition, you're looking at what is, for all intents and purposes, a primary plat of this development. The location along 200 or along 100 North, right up there in the northeastern part of the town. Property was rezoned from R1A to R2 and R2 to the PUD classification to provide for this development of the property into a single-family residential subdivision. And like I said, this is a request for secondary approval of the planned unit development, which is on a residential development, a primary plat. This would subdivide this property, this 80.75 acre property into 152 lots. It's a gross density of just over about 1.8 units an acre, or just shy 1.9 units an acre, which one you all like to do the rounding. The petitioner has submitted 8 waiver requests for the street standards within the subdivision control ordinance. However, and I think this is a function of the way my predecessor did business. 7 of those waiver standards are handled in the planned unit development ordinance itself. So that's the reason my staff report basically says those 7 waivers have already been, quote, approved by the planned unit development ordinance. I think my predecessor would have people put in the zoning ordinance the waivers of the standards that they wanted to do, and then come back and then re-request those waivers when it came to the plan commission, which made no sense to me, because for all intents and purposes, they've been incorporated as alternate standards in your plan unit development ordinance. But I think that developers that have done business historically with the town know that even if those waivers have already been approved in the PUD ordinance process, that they're supposed to request them again, and so they do. The only real waiver that I really couldn't find in the ordinance is the acceleration length taper waiver that is shown basically at the main entrance of the subdivision. And the rationale for that waiver is they do have a limited amount of, so an acceleration taper allows people who are making right turns out of a subdivision to come up to some speed before they merge into the main travel lane of 100 North in this particular case. And the petitioner does have an abbreviated acceleration taper as part of this. The first part of that obviously is that the town's preference in this particular case is to line up the center line of the main entrance of this subdivision with the center line of the main entrance of the subdivision north of here. And because of that, it offsets that main entrance a little bit at the where this development touches 100 North. So they've got a full deceleration taper for people that are making right-hand turns into the subdivision, but they do have an abbreviated acceleration taper as traffic makes that right turn out of the subdivision onto 100 North. I think from the staff's perspective, it's preferable, given their space constraints, it's preferable to have those 2 streets line up. It's more safe, in other words, for those 2 entrances to the subdivisions to line up, so don't have an offset intersection creating a new conflict point. So from the staff's perspective, we believe that the waiver is justified because lining up those entrances is a safer alternative than to have them misaligned and still have all the required tapers that the subdivision control ordinance requires. Let's see. Like I said, the request that come before you is identical, really, in all respects to the planned unit development ordinance that you have already heard and forwarded to the town council with a favorable recommendation, and that the town council has approved. So we do recommend, this basically shows the layout as proposed in the subdivision plat. Like I said, it's identical to that which was approved by the town council during the initial review of the plan unit development. We do recommend approval of all the waiver requests. We do recommend approval of the PUD F2104, the secondary approval of the Brookstone Plan Unit Development with our standard 3 conditions of approval, that revised plans still have to comply with all the commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted, that the project receive any necessary review and approval from Crossroads Engineering on behalf of the town, Hendricks County and Hendricks County Drainage Board, if those are applicable, and I don't believe that they are. And then the final plat will comply with all the relevant portions of the subdivision control ordinance in the town code. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Just for clarity with us, Mr. Taylor and Mr. Peebles, originally I thought you said that the first 7 waivers are unnecessary, and then your comments just now said you think we should approve all the waivers. So does that mean we need an approval of all the waivers, or does that mean that we only need to approve the one?
Honestly, when I did the findings of fact, I only included the one, because my belief, maybe Dan could chime in, I believe that the approval of the plan unit development ordinance already handled the other seven deviations from the street standards. But I know historically that's not always been the case, so.
I hate this, but I agree with Bill. As you know, we talk about when a PUD is approved, a new ordinance is written, and it's as if we insert it into our ordinance as an appendix that only applies to that one development. So for those reasons, I agree with Bill that when they put those, the standards in there that allowed their curvilinear design in their ordinance, they solved that waiver problem at that time. And when the town council approved that, it negated any need for those. And so I agree with Mr. Peebles. I think the only waiver you need to grant is what we've called number 8 in here, which relates to the acceleration. And then in the consideration of that, I think Mr. Peebles laid out the rationale is that we're kind of choosing which safety feature the town favors more than the other. And on balance, the lining up of the entrances is the reason the town supports this waiver of another safety feature, which is an acceleration distance. And so I agree with him, and it pains me, but I agree with him.
I just want to ensure that Mr. Peebles realizes that somebody on the commission listens to both the beginning and the end of his entire conversation,
Pretty impressive.
contrary to what he normally believes.
Really impressive, Jim. I think it's good.
Every once in a while.
Oh, the pain.
So we need to
Waiver.
do the waiver and then,
Can I
Do
ask
the
one
motion.
more question?
Okay.
So, Bill, how long is the normal acceleration lane? How many feet would it normally be? How much are we asking for cutting off here, I guess, in the question?
That's a good question.
I didn't see anything in here that told me how, half the distance, is it 3/4 the distance, 2/3 the distance?
Going. I will definitely have that in my staff report if this ever comes up again, that's for sure, but I don't have it in there. And I'm not sure if I've got that standard in the subdivision control ordinance.
Well, just
Which I
as you
don't.
looked at it as a staffer, was it half the size it normally is, or was it just general?
It was about half. Yeah, it was about half. Now, going off the top of my head, and again, this is the top of my head. So if Ryan comes up here and tells me you're wrong, I want to say that the acceleration taper is about 100 to 150 feet. So it was probably in the neighborhood of 75 when they came in there. I mean, it was, they don't have a lot of room in there, but they've got enough room to at least get 1 or 2 cars to start accelerating before they.
So you're only talking 100 feet, okay. I thought it was longer than that, okay. Great, thank you.
I have a quick question. Hopefully it's quick. So I'm new on the board, obviously, but can you give me a brief history on this development? Because I want to say I've seen this before publicly. Is it because there's fewer lots this time? Walk me through real briefly what the major differences are.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, it went through about 3, maybe 2. It went through the process as a plan unit development at that time. And I think it had a development in the neighborhood starting at about 190-ish lots. And then through that approval process, it got cut down to just over, I think, 182. But the town, that was forwarded from this body to the town council with a favorable recommendation. And then as the petitioner went to the town council rejected that initially. And so a year and a half, 2 years later, the petitioners kept working on the plan. And he ended up cutting it down, I believe, to not I believe, it actually is 152 lots, which is what this proposal is before you. And incorporating in the neighborhood of about 47% open space in the development. Creating 3 parks, Northern, Central, and Southern Park for active, which I believe was the northern park, and then passive recreation, which was the middle and the southern parks, and then some open space for tree preservation as well along the edges of the subdivision, like in the southwest corner of the subdivision. There's a common area, and I believe the intent of that particular common area is just to keep it in its natural state, with the exception of the extension of a trail through it. But and then that was forwarded by this body with a favorable recommendation, and the town council then approved that last year. So yeah, that's the general scope of it. It was a little denser, well, not a little denser, it was quite a bit denser when it was first proposed, but the developers come back with a plan significantly less dense, more consistent with the surrounding property owners. More consistent with the surrounding single-family properties, I guess I should say, because it should remember on the southern side, it's a lot denser on the southern side, the development down there, and a lot more open space than what our ordinances would ever require. Almost half the development, really.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this right now. The entranceway is on the right on the edge of the northeast corner, isn't it? I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
There's just no room to move turning right. Okay.
Yeah, now without acquiring right of way, and there was significant remonstrance at both this body and the town council of additional right of way being acquired associated with this development.
And they acquired it.
No. There was remonstrance to this
They wanted
petition
them to do it, and they
to
did.
make sure that the town didn't acquire right of way. So there was the remonstrators did not want the town to take their land essentially for right of way.
And that's what we needed to make the acceleration lane longer.
If we were gonna do it by ordinance, we would, or the developer would have to acquire right of way, and that was a no-go. That was the petition, the surrounding property owners did not want the town to take their land.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Would the petitioner please approach? And provide us with your name and address, please.
Yes, good evening, members of the Plan Commission. David Compton, Vice President of Land Acquisition, Pulte Homes of Indiana, 11590 North Meridian Street, Carmel, Indiana. I think Bill did a great job. It's been a journey. It started 3 years ago at about 192 lots. The original petition was supported by the Plan Commission, defeated by the council. We went back, re-engineered the plan with input from the public and concerned neighbors and concerned stakeholders in Avon, and came back and was approved unanimously by the council in October of last year by a vote of 5-0. So tonight you have in front of you the primary plat, or the equivalent of the primary plat is called forth under the PUD. 7 out of the 8 waivers were addressed in the PUD process. The 8th one deals with a better alignment of the entranceway. We had engaged Steve Fairbach of A&F Engineering, which does a lot of work in the town, and Steve also worked with Ryan and the town engineer to make sure that they were concurring with Steve's analysis that the entranceway was safe to move forward with. And based upon that discussion, it was approved by the council, and we stand here before you tonight to answer any additional questions. Thank you.
Do you have is there any illustrations showing the relationship of the proposed entrance with the existing entrance on the south side of 100 North?
I do not.
Okay.
they line up, the center line was what was key, man, was that they line up us and the Camden entrance to the north, so.
Questions for the petitioner?
Just for our new members, didn't you redraw all your streets and the whole development in order to get the numbers down and to accommodate? I guess I'm just trying to make the point, you've worked very hard to accommodate with the commission in the past. And I think backyards or back porches and things like that. So I want our newer members to know that you have worked with us to try to.
It was a group effort. You know, we had a lot of input from interested parties in the Avon community, so I'm not going to take all the credit for being that smart because I'm not. We looked at everything, took out some lots, but also just the open space increased dramatically, and we also increased the architectural standards during that time period. So the answer is yes, but I can't take all the credit. Pulte can't take all the credit on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from staff for the petitioner? Okay, with that, we'll open it up to public comment at 8:06. Is there anybody who has signed up to speak as to this matter? No. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this matter? You can please approach. And state your name and address, please.
My name is Mike Rawlinson. I represent Avon Community School Corporation. So we've had some discussions with a developer. We'd like to continue that. I wasn't even going to speak to this until I saw there was a 25-foot radius. A school bus cannot turn on a 25-foot radius. Our buses require 47 feet. And this is a problem throughout Avon, but as we move forward, we'd like to address that. They were kind enough to give me a 20 or a 50-foot radius to turn in, but the rest of them right now are currently a 25-foot turning radius. And unless the school bus actually turns into the oncoming lane of traffic, we're either driving up over curbs or in people's yards to make those turns. And it becomes a problem for us, particularly if there are boulders there that do damage to our school buses. So we would like to just, I guess, levy our concern about the narrow turning radiuses.
Are you talking about just at the entrance or within the entire development?
Well, within the entrance, I think, you raised it to 50, they raised it to 50 feet in the entrance, but the rest of it is 25 feet. And I think what we would like to do, and I believe they would agree to this, is maybe establish where the bus routes go and not say change every one of those, but if we can pre-establish where the buses need to get through there and address just those concerns. For example, we would not send a bus down a cul-de-sac. So a 25-foot turning radius on a cul-de-sac does not create us any problems. But on main thoroughfares or any place where we have to drive a bus, it probably does. Well, it for sure does. So we'd like to work through that, and they have agreed to do so, but I just wanted to go on record saying that a 25-foot radius does not work for the school corporation.
Can you repeat what that requirement is, the minimum? Can you repeat what the minimum radius necessary is for a bus?
I don't know, Bill, do you know what that is? Oh, for a school bus, it's 47 feet.
Thank you.
So are you saying like the intersection of Pearson Pass and Barker Drive, that turns too tight for you to come down Pearson Pass and turn right on Barker Drive? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know what I'm saying as far as those street names. I don't know the street names, so.
Okay, well, coming straight, see how you come straight down?
Pointer,
from the
we got a pointer.
entranceway? Are you saying they can't turn right to go west on, that's Barker Drive?
So if we come in, I don't know if I can, excuse me. If we come in through that main entrance, we're not going to be able to make that first right-hand
That's what I'm
turn.
talking about.
Yes.
So you could just come all the way down and do like that S curve, but you can't do what they call Barker Drive.
If we come in through here, we would not be able to make that turn without chopping that corner.
So what's the solution? What are you going to do?
Well, I don't know. We haven't worked out bus routes yet. If the bus can come straight down.
Right down through there, and the kids will just have to walk. Okay.
But the school corporation has maximum walking distances. So if it's beyond 1,000 feet, we don't ask the student to do that. Now, as we see, as we start amending and kind of coming into the 22nd or 21st century, so to speak, we're going to have to make some adjustments too. So if we can pre-establish those bus stops before property is sold and everybody knows before they're going in that there's going to be a bus stop there, There's going to be a bus stop there, and that radius is probably going to be too small. But there's going to be a bus stop there. As long as we pre-establish that before, then we can adjust our walking distances. And I don't know if there's a solution tonight other than they are willing to work with
I
us.
think
and-
now's the time to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's too late because it's already been.
Yeah, it's a primary plat, so we don't have any of those standards in the ordinance, so it's not something we review. But I know that the petitioner and the school corporation have been discussing pre-planned bus routes and other sorts of things in this development.
Do we have sidewalks on both sides of the road in this development as well?
Yes, we do. And they have a trail system that cuts through the middle of it as well. But yeah, there will be sidewalks on both sides of the road of all the public streets in the subdivision.
So as moving forward, I mean, I would say street widths could be a problem too. A 26-foot street when you allow parking, I don't know if they allow parking on both sides or not, but if you have a 26-foot wide street, and you have an 8-foot car parked on one side and an 8-foot car parked on the other side, that only leaves 10 feet, and our buses are 10 feet mirror to mirror. So, I mean, we struggle a lot with this. And, as we move forward, we would ask that that maybe you keep some consideration for this as we move forward.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Okay, with that, I close public comment on PUD F2104 at 8:11 PM. Discussion? I guess we need to discuss the waiver first, Mr. Taylor?
Correct.
Okay, so discussion about the waiver relating to the deceleration lance taper length.
So that's just the entryway, right? So it has nothing to do with what the school corporation's talking about.
Correct, that's what I understand, yes.
So while we're discussing that, I would like to confirm that staff has, for this waiver, has taken into effect public safety, correct?
Right.
Has taken into the subdivision control ordinance, the unique conditions of this situation, the physical characteristics, and the assertion that the conditions of the waiver have been met. Is that correct?
Yes, in our staff report, we discussed all the.
I just want to confirm that that has been
We do believe that the
reviewed and taken into account. Therefore, the needs of the waiver and of the ordinance are met. Thank you. Thank you.
Discussion about the waiver. Any comments about the request for waiver? Do I hear a motion to grant the waiver?
I move that we approve PUD F21-04 Brookstone PUD, a request for approval of a secondary review primary plat. Of the
Well, we have to approve the waiver first, and then we approve the,
You're fine. Just keep
PUD.
going with the waiver part.
Okay, we good?
Just waiver. Just,
That's for the actual plat. You can just request, just make a motion to approve the waiver.
First?
Yeah, first.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We approve the waiver.
There you go.
Then we're going to vote on that?
do we have a second?
Second.
Is this a roll call or,
Is.
okay, we could take a roll call?
Or.
Catherine Ransberg,
4.
Ed Rosenbaum,
4.
Harold Isel, Iser,
4.
James Petrutis,
4.
Dave Kaufman,
4.
Mason Pike,
4.
Now my motion, Mr. Taylor? I move that we approve PUD F21-04 Brookstone PUD, a request for approval of a secondary review primary plat of the Brookstone Plan Unit Development, subject to the following conditions. Number one, any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. Second, the project receives any necessary review and approval by Crossroads Engineering on behalf of the town, HCSO, and HC Draining Board. And third, the final plat will comply with all the relevant portions of the subdivision control ordinance and the town code.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We could take a vote.
Paul Gutenberg. 4. Catherine Ransford.
4.
Ed Rosenbaum.
4.
Harold Iser.
4.
James Petruitis.
4.
Dave Kaufman.
4.
Mason Pike.
4.
Carries.
Motion carries. We can now move on to other business. I would like to say we have 3 new members of our planning commission. I think it would be only common courtesy to ask them to introduce themselves and welcome them. So if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Mason Pike. I've been a resident of Avon since 2006. We have 2 children, twins, and appreciate the opportunity to serve on this committee.
Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dave Kaufman. I've been in Avon since '97. I've been active on the Parks Board for the last couple of years and was I volunteered to take on this commission, and sounds like it's going to be a fun journey. Thanks.
I'm Harold Heiser. Been in Hendricks County 60 years and Avon the last 28 years, or I should say Washington Township the last 28 years, and Avon for the last 3 years up in Stony Meadow. And my wife and I live up there, and glad to be a part of all this, part of a lot of other things around the county, and this is one more. Glad to be here.
Thank
Welcome.
you. And also, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Petruitis for his service as our president. And not sure how I feel about taking on your mantle, but we appreciate your work and the way that you've always run our commissions in a very expeditious way. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Just a couple of things just for information's sake. So I got a phone call on the 18th of a month asking from my COO, asking me to move to another state, which is only several states away. And they want an answer within 13 days, and me to move within 13 days. So as such, I have actually, after negotiating with the CEO about wages and other remunerations, I moved basically. So at that point, first of all, I would like to say I appreciate the assistance and the coaching of attorney Mr. Dan Taylor, the town manager Ryan Cannon, the longtime planning member Paul Gutenberger, and Director Mr. William Peebles for everything that you've done for the coaching and assistance I've received. I am also thankful for the opportunity to serve, the commitment as a member and president of the Planning Commission. I appreciate the hard work, the openness, the dedication, the friendship, the foresight and leadership of those dedicated to serving the public in the town of Avon. The community members, the town staff, the consultants, the board, and commission members have my respect for giving their time and talents to work and improve the town of Avon, making a welcoming community to live and raise your families. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. Any other additional business?
I'd like to make a comment, though. Having served with Jim for several years, I'll say it's been a pleasure serving with you. When we're both members, you always lent your voice, and I appreciate how you always let everybody go first before you would then make your comments. And as president, you did a really nice job of running the meetings, and I really appreciate that. So wish you the best in your future endeavors. We'll miss your voice on the commission. Try to do your best, fill your shoes. I know Catherine will do a good job for you.
Thank you.
Any additional items that need to be raised this evening? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
So we are adjourned.